Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Top Ends with Twins. It has been 38 weeks, and here we are, Luke. Can you believe it, dude? This is pretty crazy. The FPL season's over.
We made it. I feel like we've been running a marathon, and we're officially crossed the finish line. The season is over, and we're here to review how the marathon finished for both of us. So, without further ado, Paul, let's get into how our FPL seasons finished out. I think the best way to do that is let's kind of talk about game week 38, how our teams performed, and then what final overall rank that resulted in for us. So I'll let you go first.
38 was a pretty decent week for me. I ended up on 68 points on an average of 52. I made a decision that I think was partly due to my frustration with FPL and also just trying to play really mega differentials. I captained Trossard. He got me 4 points. Did not pan out if I would have placed the captaincy on somebody like even just Havertz or especially Isak or Elise. It would have been light years different, or Pedro Porro. That would have been huge for rank gain, but ended up on 2.1 million this week. Not ideal, but it ends up putting me at, let's see, 1.03. 1,031,000. Sorry, my brain. 1,031,000 as my final rank, which is very disappointing, but I kind of know reasons why, which we'll detail later in the pod. There was just a lot of issues in my team my team kind of just fell apart towards the end of the season, probably around I'd say game week 30, 31-ish. Just did not carry on the way it should have. So, but that's okay.
You did wildcard in 34, right? 34 was when you wildcarded because that's what everyone free had.
So my wildcards were played in 34 and also in 29.
Okay. So very compact there, right? Maybe that's something we can dive into a little bit later on.
Yeah, but let's hear about yours. We can dive into all these different reasons later in the pod.
Yeah, we definitely will, I'm sure. So my overall final rank ended up being 192,516 overall. So I ended up under the top 100K marker, which I am incredibly happy about. At game week 24, sorry. No, 25. I was at 1.7 million overall. So I cut off about 1.5 million of my rank in the span of about 13 game weeks.
Yeah, so we basically went separate directions.
Yeah, I had been in the trenches. There were a lot of red arrows back to back from pretty much game week 8 all the way up to 30. So I was struggling.
It was kind of intolerable. It was bad. It was really bad.
I was really struggling, and one of the main reasons why I struggled so much is because a lot of teams brought in Salah. I did not bring him in. And that really hurt me and set me back big time. And then I started kind of grasping for some differentials, trying to go a little different. My timing was off on specific players.
You were very close on a lot of different stuff.
Yeah, but FPL is all about timing, right? You have to get those players when they're in a purple patch. And if you get them before or right after, you really miss that advantage of having the right players at the right time. Mm-hmm. So like I said, I ended up 192K overall. Extremely happy with that rank. In game week 38, I ended up on 92 points. Took a -4, so I was very happy with that. And the reason why I ended up having such a good week ultimately is I captained Foden. And Paul was not very happy, but I was very excited to see those 2 goals go in early.
I wish there was a camera of our reactions.
It would have been great.
Like in the fucking second minute that bullshit happens and Luke's jumping up, running around as my soul's dying. And I will say I was not happy with Luke in that moment at all.
To be honest,
because I mean, really, at the end of the day, the FPL stuff is great, but Arsenal winning the league against City would have been fucking historical.
It would have been, but in my mind, I had already pretty much said this is what's going to happen. I feel like City was going to win the title. I didn't think there was much of a chance that Arsenal would be able to win it on the final day. And, there was a few chances and point in time where there was a slim hope.
There was a possibility.
But with that being said, I didn't feel too bad about it because I didn't think it was overly realistic that Arsenal would have a chance there, just because we know what City does.
Just disregard my feelings. It's fine. It's okay. It's all right. It's fine. I'll talk to my therapist about it.
The way that I see, right? We don't have to dive into that too much. So
By the way, fuck Phil Foden. Whatever. Not the player of the year.
The thing here, though, is I also benched Isak. So that's a 14-pointer sitting first on my bench. Oh, that's great. Keep wallowing in those millions.
Oh, okay. That's what you want this podcast to turn into?
No, it's not going to.
We're gonna, just so everybody out there knows, we're gonna go play pickleball after this. I'm gonna eviscerate Luke like I did yesterday.
That's great. So I benched Isak, and it was a tough call there because I did bring in Mateta as well. He was a part of my -4.
It's a really good transfer.
I brought in Mateta and I brought in Havertz. So both of those returned, paid back the -4. Mateta, an insane final week. He could have had 5 goals. One of them, he did have a 4th that was ruled off for offsides. But with the way Palace were looking, they were sending a message to the Premier League on game week 38. There was no doubt about it. If they managed to keep that front 3 of Elise, Eze, and Mateta, and they're healthy next season, with the support they have at the back, their midfield is really solid as well.
Warden is so impressive. The England squad just got announced today, Luke, and he made the England
he
squad.
very well deserved call up there. He's
sure
going to be someone who's going to lock in that position, I believe, because he is a high quality player at what he does.
Yeah, no, he for sure is.
So Palace looked incredible. Absolutely loved watching that match. But overall, very happy with my final game week rank here. I did for very briefly, right before the deadline, I was convinced that Palace was going to win by a lot. It just felt right. Villa were kind of, they were at the beach at that point. They've already secured Champions League. They had their
party.
They
don't have to play Arsenal, so why would they even try,
They had their party this past week, and they were all trashed. And I'm sure they were going out during the week and everything, celebrating securing Champions League. And it looked like it on the weekend. They did not look like they were on pace at all with what Crystal Palace was cooking up. So I almost captained Mateta before the deadline. Almost went from Foden to Mateta. Stuck with Foden, still very happy.
It still
with
worked
that.
out well for you, but that would have been a master stroke if you would have.
Yeah, and if I would have brought in Isak instead of KDB, could maybe be looking at top 150k. But I will take 192k. That's a fabulous finish in my opinion. And ended up being second in the mini league that we're a little more invested in out of everything. And I won the league of our house. And some of our friends here that, just kind of more of a fun, kind of go with it kind of league. So, really happy.
So happy for you, Luke.
That's very nice of you. Thank you. I appreciate it. Yeah. So maybe
I think we should take a little break and then.
Sure. That sounds good. We'll take a little break.
We will dive into stuff we've learned this year, stuff maybe we should improve on next year, that kind of idea.
And then after that, we'll dive a little into some early, way too early thoughts for next season.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll be right back.
Hey there, everyone. And we are back to talk with you all about analyzing how we think we maybe succeeded, how we didn't succeed this season FPL, and how we can translate that into next season and see more green arrows and kind of take away what we really learned from this season. So Paul, I'll hand it over to you. What do you think is the first thing that sticks out in your mind about this FPL season?
So we were kind of talking about this yesterday because we're fanatics and this is what we talk about most of the time in our free time in general too. But the way that I kind of ran my whole team as a unit this year was more so I kind of spread the money around the team, and my bench had more quality probably than it should have, which I think is kind of a way to play. That way the next week you're more prepared for the next game week, all that stuff. But that really came back and bit me in the ass, I'd say, because I ended up having 423 points on my bench this whole season. And that's not taking out, I'm not subtracting the points from what I would have had, whatever. That's just total 423 points on my bench this year.
423 points is a lot.
It's a lot, especially when you consider where my final rank was and how much even half those points would have helped for my final rank. So it's very frustrating, but
For perspective on that, I had 277 points benched. Paul had 423, and I felt like I had a lot at times.
Yeah, it's really frustrating. It is. And earlier in the season it wasn't as big of a deal because I was still performing well. But like towards the tail end of the season when my rank really started dropping, it's like those extra points would have helped so much with that. So
they would. And I think it was some simple picks, right? Because this week, who did you bench?
I had who was it? Romero, who had a clean sheet, and then also Munoz, who was from Crystal Palace, who had ended up on 10 points.
Yeah.
So frustrating. And then I also had 2 other players that contributed some points, but ended up 21 points on the bench.
Yeah. And were you doubled up on Arsenal defense this week?
No, I only had Ben White. So it was Ben White, Pedro Porro. And,
so that didn't hurt you as bad as some people.
It
but
didn't.
That was, I think that Arsenal losing their clean sheet was the reason why I snuck in the top 200K. Because I just have Gabriel in my team at this point. I kind of hedged and I said, I know everyone's got double Arsenal defense. I didn't want to go there because I was looking to be a bit differential. On the final day, I could have brought in a second Arsenal defender, but I wanted to kind of roll the dice a little bit, right?
Yeah, makes sense.
And it paid out.
Well, let's hear what's your biggest...
Well, I wanted to ask you a question on that.
Fine.
So after you've benched a lot of points, how do you think you're going to change that next season? Will you go more to that mentality of, I just want to invest more funds in a starting 11 and kind of go really cheap for the rest, so you're not having that benching headache? Or how are you going to approach that next season?
I don't know. I kind of do like the way I played this season in certain regards. Like, I think that gives a lot of flexibility, like I said, week to week, especially if you want to like start rolling transfers. And I think I was so good, and I think you probably were too, about not taking -4s like the first half of the season. Like, I literally did not take a -4.
What was your total negative hits and points taken? Sorry, I stumbled through that.
I'm not sure. You got to give me a second for that one.
It should. So if
so
you're
-56.
50s, I took -36.
Yeah, I'm telling you, the second half of
you
the
took
year,
a lot of hits at the
my
end.
team was in flux, and it just did not work out well for me. Obviously, considering I ended up above 1 million.
I feel like I took a lot of hits, frankly, but looking back, I really did not. There was one week I took a -8. That was during game week 28.
I mean, so just so everybody knows, up to game week 19, I only took 2 negative hits.
Yeah.
And then the rest of the season, I had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Like it I think part of it was the double game week fever, which apparently next year we won't have near as much of. So
yeah, we will not, because of the change to the FA Cup replay schedule.
Yeah, so that's gonna be a different experience. But I think one of the main things too is I have to be more structured in how I bring people in and out of my team, because having -56 points and that many points on my bench is just very wasteful as an FPL manager, and that's probably the reason why I ended up with 1 million.
It might be, but I think that's a good way to approach it, right? I think you're being very practical about keeping your options open and how you want to approach that next season. And as always, I'm more than happy to provide a secondary opinion if you ever have a benching quandary.
All right, Phil Foden, calm down over there. Phil Foden, let's just not go into it.
That's fine. He'll come back up on the podcast because he was important to my team this season. My first takeaway from this FPL season, from the 2023-2024 season, is to trust my gut more. Because I think, as we talked about Foden. That's something I was very high on from the beginning of the season, is that if he played centrally, he was going to have a belter of a season, and he did. Second, third highest point scorer in the game.
You have to say though that I think a lot of that is probably due to De Bruyne being hurt in the beginning of the year.
Right, and that's not something we can. I did not know De Bruyne was going to be out from game week 1 to game week 19, 18, whatever it may be. That's not something I knew, but I still knew that if he was playing that position, I thought that he would, find success there. So trusting my gut and understanding that, if I see something, and it feels true, it feels right to go with that, right? Like in my mind right now, one of the things I'm really thinking is Crystal Palace feel absolutely on it. And I could see them starting the season out on fire next year. We'll see what happens if they add players to the team.
There's a lot of time between now and next season, though, Luke. I mean, you have to think about it. What if? I mean, we know how injury prone Eze and Elise are. Like stuff can happen in the off season with
right
playing for
as
countries.
they will most likely be playing for England in the Euros. I don't think he's going to be playing a lot, so his game time should be down. But at least they didn't even make the French squad.
Yeah, that's true.
Which is pretty crazy. And Mateta did not either, which is pretty wild as well. My point being, though, is that I think going into the start of the season, we have a lot of narratives that come up. A lot of content creators are pushing certain players because they believe in them. And I'm going to do my absolute best to, try to take in that information to an extent. But I just want to play my own game, right? And if I feel right about someone, if it feels solidly something that I believe in and trust, then I'm gonna go with that, because I feel like this season I've shown myself that trust yourself and it should pay off in the long run.
Yeah, that's I think that's something we really talk about a lot, is kind of like trusting your gut, but also like trying to decide like when you are like kind of like a good analogy is where you are on the wave for this player, essentially. Like, is this wave about to die, or is it continuously going up? And like kind of having the judgment of that is probably one of the best skills as an FPL manager.
Yeah, it is. And so that's a great segue into my second point from the season.
Yeah, go ahead.
I think trusting your gut is very important, but secondly, realizing when you're wrong is very important.
Yeah.
And where I was wrong majorly this season is not bringing in Salah early. That was my biggest rank killer. People captaining him, I did not have any Liverpool assets, and Salah went on a tear from what it was about game week 7 to about right before he went to AFCON.
And then he disappeared.
And then he just wasn't the same after he got back after that. Yeah. But Salah was someone that has shown me, if I am having someone who's killing my rank every week, who's as highly owned and captain as Salah is, I need to move heavens to get him in my team. It's just what needs to happen.
I agree. And I think that was kind of like Cole Palmer for me, Luke, towards the middle end of the season.
Yeah.
Like I had him in the middle part of the season, and then he didn't perform for 2 to 3 weeks, and I took him out, and then he absolutely just...
Yeah, that was around the time whenever he had, what was it, the 29-pointer against Everton?
I think it was 26.
With the quadruple. It's an insane return.
That week basically put the nail in the coffin of my season.
Yeah, and I think you knew it at that point too.
Yeah,
because you were
fucking around a little bit.
you kind of just fizzled out from that point on. I think that's a tough one to bounce back from, though.
I lost interest a little bit. I'm not gonna lie, a little bit.
So if you had to look back on how you used your chips, or do you have another point you wanted to bring up?
No, honestly, I think that's
okay.
We basically touched on everything.
Okay, so let's move on to our chip usage. Whenever you look at how you selectively use your chips, do you think you approach that in the best way? But before you say if you think you did a good job, go ahead and highlight exactly what you did for the listeners.
Okay, so I played my first wild card in game week 20, and then I played my triple captain. And then if you look at when I use my chips, it's like I use the triple captain 34, wild card 35, bench boost 37, free hit 38.
So they're pretty clustered up.
I think we could all agree that I saved my chips for too late in the season. And it kind of was something where like I like the way my team was set up, but if you look at my overall rank towards the tail end of the season, it went like it was at 596,000, right? Which is not bad. I don't mind that rank at all. The next week, 634. The next week, 970. Next week, 926. The next one, 1.6 million.
Ouch.
So like that 1 week.
What was 1.6?
It was 32 to 33.
Okay.
In 32, I was 926,000, and then the next week I was 1.6 million. So
that was Cole Palmer, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, so as we can tell, my team was not in that bad of a place, but I obviously did not do enough to leave it in a good place.
Right.
So using a wild card earlier, even if it meant um, avoiding those doubles or not having the wild card there to set up the doubles. At the
Yeah.
end of the day, the best situation for my team would have been to make adjustments when I needed to make it, because it's all based on
Agreed.
your team setup. It's
Yeah.
like, to me, I think I for sure do this. I'm a total double game week stan. I'm going all out on these, and like obviously they can pay out. Like I think that absolutely flipped Luke's season. Like the way he played, I think 34, right?
Yeah.
34
is the big double game week.
was a great move. Totally respect it, but I get too wrapped up in the idea of that sometimes, rather than just being like, what does my team need?
Yeah.
Which is hard to do.
Yeah.
It is, but
It is. I completely agree with that. Sometimes, and this might be another great takeaway for you, right? Is that taking a -4 early to get someone in that you feel like you're missing will save you hits later on in the back end. So if you looked at it, right, and what was the week Cole Palmer went crazy? It was
I can tell you it was.
I think it was probably 23.
It was 23. No, it was 33.
33. Yeah.
And
Okay.
33, he had a 26 pointer.
Yeah. And so 33, 26 pointer. Let's say that you would have brought him in maybe 30, right? 30, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
But you brought him in for a -4. Those points pay themselves back so quickly. If you bring in someone who is in a purple patch like that, and then that way you're not taking more negatives later on trying to make up points that you missed out on, right? So maybe that's another great takeaway for both of us is get those players in whenever they are on fire, and we feel like we're trying to resist a little bit, right? But sometimes it's not the best for our teams. I think that's a good takeaway. Pivoting though to my chip usage. So this season I used my first wild card in game week 20. I saw 3 red arrows following that usage there.
Which is kind of crazy.
Until 23. So the 4th week after that, I got a green, and then 2 more red arrows after that. But what followed that is a round of 6 green arrows. And that was really kind of a good point in my season, because what it allowed me to do is I stabilized my rank. So the wild card did not initially pay out, but in the long run it did. And it allowed me to go from the moment I wild card, I was 1.4 million, and all the way up until my free hit, I got down to 941,000. So I cut off about 8 million in my 800,000, sorry, 800,000 in my overall rank, which really helped and put me in a position to where my free hit and saving my chips really paid out. So wild card in 20, and then I also triple captained in 28. I triple captained Solanke, and I think we'll all remember for that double game week, that was
that was when I got called.
The fixture got called off for the medical situation that occurred between Bournemouth and Luton. So they replayed the fixture. Solanke missed the penalty. So that would have been.
I wish I could relive that after seeing him jump up off the couch when Foden scored.
That would have been really
nice
that
in my veins
to have Solanke scoring that goal, and that would have helped a lot. But I think it was the right triple captain for what I wanted, and it also didn't leave the chip sitting on the table too long. It felt high upside, so I went for it. But then after that, my plan was to target the doubles in 34 and 37 as much as I possibly could. That was I knew I wanted to do that. I didn't know the best way to do it up until about game week 32 or so. And at that moment, I decided that I think the best way to approach 34 is the best round of doubles. I thought the fixtures were better. I thought 37, the teams that were doubling, I couldn't really trust them. The ones that I did, they had some tough fixtures. Like City, they had who did they play first? Before they played Fulham away, and then they played Spurs away. I didn't love that, so I was like, I don't want to invest too. I did invest heavily, but I didn't think the upside was as great. So that's why I went my free hit in 34, and it paid incredible dividends. So I went from where's my rank? I went from 941K the week before in 33 all the way up to 356,000 in 1 week. So that absolutely put me on the right path to end up where I did, where I ended up in the top 200K. I wildcarded in 35, brought in a lot of doublers to get ready for 37. Got a small red arrow in game week 36, and then 2 green arrows in 37 and 38, and finished out the season with a bang. And I think this is something that we can talk about a little bit, because going through the course of the season, the narrative was, oh, well, blank game week is going to be the best time to use a free hit. And I strongly disagree, because in a blank game week, I think you have less to select from. The teams weren't nearly as good, and the upside of having an extra 90 minutes on top of the original 90 minutes you get from players, it's so much higher.
Yeah,
Right?
we're totally in agreement with that. Like, I think it feels kind of, honestly, to me, wasteful to play. I used a free hit on the last week of the season, so I can't really talk for not a blank game week or a double game week. But at the end of the day, it makes the most sense to maximize, I think, every chip. So like a triple captain on a double game week, a wild card on a bench boost, or any of these chips, a free hit, make more sense to me in a double game week when you get double the minutes. Because what do we always talk about? X minutes.
Yeah.
The more minutes you have players on the pitch, there's a higher chance they're going to return.
Yeah.
It's literally just that simple. In my mind, it is.
Very simple maths at that point.
Yeah, literally.
I do think that, I don't know, the narratives that come up with an FPL community are quite funny to me sometimes, because it seems like, I just think people overthink way too much, especially when it comes to FPL.
I mean, I think people just get in the weeds of it, and it's really hard to like dig through.
It is. You need to find
stuff,
and this is one thing we've talked about in the podcast too, is cultivating how much content you're taking in is really important.
Yeah. And I mean, it has to be like what we always talk about. It's the game you're playing. It's not. I honestly, to me, I don't see any joy in being like, I'm gonna follow the cookie cutter mold of like what the content creators say to play this week. And yeah, sometimes my team falls that way because I'm like, yeah, this makes the most sense because of my own logical thought process that matches up with that, But like, I would at this point, I mean, obviously we've been playing FPL for 2 years now. I would never just be like, I'm gonna go to Twitter to pick my team, Like, to me, what's the fun in that, At the end of the day, really, it's like, but I mean, if you want to, it's also your team, so you can do whatever you want.
Yeah, and exactly what you're saying, right? You play the game however you want to. If you have a content creator that you love the transfers they make every week, you copy their transfers, more power to you. But what happens if that content creator is no longer putting out their team every week, right? Then my point being is you kind of have to teach yourself to fish, right?
Yeah.
And that's really what we're trying to do.
Some of us need to learn to fish. Some of us really do.
I agree.
I'm not saying anything at all. I'm not saying anything right now, but some of us need to learn to fish,
We really do. But ultimately, right, I think we've had very good seasons.
You had a good season.
No, I think you did. I think what happened is you got to the end and you're trying to claw back the rank that you had. And then when you go differential in some of the ways you did, either it pans out, but the likelihood of that happening, it's tough. It's
also, I'm just going to call an ISO for 1 second.
Yeah, go for it.
Kai Havertz, thank you so much, dude. Like, easily my favorite transfer of the FPL season of any FPL transfer ever. Brought him in for that awesome run he went on, and honestly, it was so fun to have him in my team week to week. Being an Arsenal fan, having him performing for my FPL team, I wish I would have had the captaincy on him every week since I brought him in.
I mean, he was the definition of consistency.
It's awesome. We'll see kind of what Arsenal does next year, but I think Havertz's price will go up in FPL, so we'll have to see where all that falls. I mean, we'll have this discussion later this summer or at different points about prices, all that stuff. So we can dive into that a later date. Okay. But one more, just thank you, King Kai, because it was great, dude. I love it.
Yeah, and he's a joy to watch too. He's a fun player.
He is. He's a little shithouse. I love it.
He is. So to follow up on that, I want you to pick out your worst transfer of the season. and think about it.
I already know.
Okay, what's your worst transfer of the season?
I can tell you which week it was. Let's see. Wait. Give me 1 second. Sorry, I'm looking at a chart real quick. So whichever, I actually don't have it right in front of me, but whichever game week it was, where it was the game week before Luton started doubling, where they had a double, and then I think it was a blank, and then another double.
Yes.
I don't know exactly which week that was, but I brought in Adebayo instead of Morris.
Oh,
And
it was 28.
He performed that week. I think it was against Newcastle. He got an assist,
28.
and then he got hurt. And so that just set off a train reaction in my team where I was trying to bring in more people for the double, but then I took Adebayo out for Morris, and Morris didn't perform.
Yeah.
And the Luton assets were so bad. They just didn't do well for me. Like I had Barkley, I had Alfie. I'm not gonna say his last name just because I say it wrong.
Alfie Doughty.
Doughty, yeah.
Not Doherty.
Yeah, we're sometimes silly on the podcast.
We're working on that. Alfie Doughty.
Yeah, these English names, man. But it's frustrating to look back on that because if Adebayo wouldn't have gotten hurt, it probably would have played out because Luton was a lot better when Adebayo was playing. Mm-hmm. It would have worked out a lot better, but then it just set off a train reaction in my team. So that's probably one of the worst transfers. Also, not having Cole Palmer for that one's really big. Or Salah early too, like Luke was saying. But
yeah,
there's a lot of what ifs, but those are probably the three main ones. What about you? What do you think, Luke?
So my worst transfer of the season, it all came down to timing, right? I think the worst one that I made was I brought in Højlund was bad. That was really bad because I was picking.
You stuck with Højlund way too long, but then whenever you got rid of him, like 2 weeks later,
then he went on he scores his first Premier League goal. Scored I think in like 2 or 3 consecutive matches. So it's between 3, right? It's either Højlund, Jota, because I had him too early before he went crazy and looked like he was going to have a belter of a season, but then he got injured, unfortunately. And then Odegaard. I brought in Odegaard before Arsenal doubled, and what week was that? I can't remember right now.
I think they doubled in 34, right?
Yeah, something like that. Oh, and another mention for worst transfer of the season was anytime I had a Stupinan in my team.
Oh, I forgot about a Stupinan.
Without a doubt, was one of the catfishes.
I'm back. No, you're not, bro.
Yeah, I'm just looking at my team from game week 1 right now. Had a Stupinan in there, Chilwell. But one of the better transfers I have made, who's been in my team for the majority of the season, is Pickford. Pickford has kept me buoyant for a little while there for a couple of weeks. Whenever he rolled off 4 or 5 consecutive clean sheets, so Pickford was a great pick for my team. Yeah, but going back to Odegaard, so I brought in Odegaard before they played Sheffield United at home, thinking that was going to be a great match for him. You know, Arsenal could probably score 7 or 8. Well, Odegaard picked up an injury that Arteta did not disclose in his presser. He didn't even make the squad. Barely made it for the so I had him sitting in my team for 3 or 4 weeks injured, where he wasn't playing. And when he came back, he didn't look that great. I could have brought in someone like Cole Palmer at that point, and it would have been a much better transfer. Going Odegaard was a bit risky. I will definitely own that. But then, you know, whenever he's looking good again, he returned really nicely. So It is what it is. As far as my best transfer of the season, it has to be Foden. From looking at my rank gain based upon players transferred in, Foden is far and away the best player I brought in. I had him early, had him for multiple hat tricks, and that really paid off. I did not captain him for any of his hauls except for this 1 in 38. But if I would have captained him for, I think, was it Fulham that he scored the hat trick? Or was that, I think it might have been Villa.
I'm not sure.
I can't remember which one. But he had some really nice hauls. If I would have captained him for those would have been great weeks to do so. But just having him in the team was great. Outside of that,
I have one more little thing, Luke, that I want to throw out.
Okay.
I think I sometimes tend to get really wrapped up in player prices and thinking about like the value they're providing, all this stuff. But if you really look at the layout of where the points fell this year for the top performers, I mean, you have Watkins at 8.9, Foden at 8.5, Palmer at 6.3, Gordon at 6.4, White at 6.1. Like, I really think that at the end of the day, like, playing the game for cost budget reasons like makes sense, but really it's about who's going to perform for your team. And I think that's a way, like, if you want to play the game, you can play it where you're just trying to build value, but like if you're playing to build points in your team, I think it's really we have to be more. I probably have to be more mindful about the way that I look at players and like their prices.
Yeah, I think that's smart. And one thing to keep in mind too, if you look at Cole Palmer, he's a great example that someone's price should not dictate if we're captaining or if we're not. Because if you look at him, he was bringing in the points like crazy. But because a lot of people were hesitant because he had a low price, because should he justify or should I be captaining a premium? That debate, I think we see this season that sometimes you just go with the best option.
Yep.
And don't let that price point sway you and say, oh, well, I'm spending this much on this player, I should be captaining him. Go with the player who you think is the best option for that week based upon how they've been playing and how their team's performing as well. Mm-hmm. That was one of the main reasons why Cole Palmer was such a great pick, is because Chelsea were so bad that he was the only one who could really do anything.
Yeah.
And as we see Chelsea get better, Cole Palmer hasn't been doing as much.
Yeah.
He hasn't been returning as often, more importantly.
Mm-hmm. Also, durability is a big thing too. I think if you're looking at a player, if you're going to keep them for a long-term run of stuff, like look, Cole Palmer was in a lot of the matches. I mean, look at him, Foden.
Look at Watkins. Watkins is a great example.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I think Watkins almost played every single game this season. I don't know exactly how many he played, but he easily played over 45 games in the calendar
year. Missed the City match. Funny how that happens. Yeah, so the only match he missed was City away.
Yeah.
Which is hilarious.
He did pick up a knock in their midweek.
I'm absolutely laughing my ass off right now. That's just so great.
I did want to kind of shout out a couple other transfers I made that I really think helped just push my season to a different level. Solanke, I was really early on. I thought that was a good transfer for me, and he for a while there he was just returning the points. Someone really reliable. He did a really good job in the team. And then also I think Trippier was really good for a certain stretch of the season. We all probably kept him a little too long, but he had those 3 assists against, I think it was Sheffield, whenever they put up 8 goals, something crazy like that against Sheffield. And he was great for a stretch there. He was someone who would have, honestly, for a defender, justified captaining for that little stretch there.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
He's someone that next season he could be in that same position because we know he plays on that right wing. Whenever he gets in those positions, he plays in incredible balls, and he's on set pieces.
And Newcastle will be better next year.
They'll retool. They might sell Isak. I would not be surprised if they do.
They could get a lot of money out of him, but I really think though, like with that midfield, if Tonali is able to play, which who knows in that situation, but I think that's kind of where you see Newcastle's season kind of start to like waver a little bit. Because I think he offered a different profile, a different kind of midfield option for them, especially ball play. Like
from a PSR perspective, though, I think to bring in the next caliber of players that they're thinking, I think they'll have to sell some players, whether it's Isak or Bruno. I think we could see both of them going, frankly. With the emergence of Gordon, say you retool, get Harvey Barnes stays healthy next season, you get another striker.
Callum Wilson will probably be out. I think
he's going to be. Sure. I think he's going to be sold. So I imagine they're going to buy a new striker, and then probably retool the midfield and get a couple more defenders.
Yeah, they may need a left back too. I don't know if Lewis Hall or
I think they like Lewis Hall a lot. I've heard Eddie Howe's he speaks very highly of him. So we'll see.
Maybe he's an option. I don't know, but I think that's all I have really.
I think real fast though, let's talk about some teams that excite us for next season.
Kind of the team we were just talking about. I think Newcastle's really exciting. I think of course City will be, Arsenal. I don't see either of those two going anywhere. Crystal Palace, of course, if they, like you said earlier, if they keep their front 3 in that midfield together, and their back line too is also a pretty young unit, and with Glasner there, they seem like they're going to be pretty impressive going forward. So they'll be exciting. Hopefully everybody stays healthy. That's always the big question with Palace, with Eze and Elise. Villa's just going to get better. with the money they're getting from going to the Champions League and like they're finished this year, they're gonna for sure be better next year too.
They will be investing money in their squad, I think.
Yeah, we'll see what
going into
United does
Champions League.
too. Like I'm sure United, who knows what's going to happen with Ten Hag and that whole situation. I heard slight rumors of maybe De Zerbi going there, which maybe
I was
there's
saying
kind of
that
whispers. I think that that's a possibility.
there's a possibility there.
If that happens, that's going to completely change United, and he's going to make them into something scary.
He doesn't have the tools to play his
Not
system,
right away.
though, at
Not
this
right
moment.
away. I'm not talking. He won't
If
be able to do that right away.
if they're
but
bringing in De Zerbi, then you know that the mentality is different because they're acknowledging his system's not going to fit those players. Bruno Fernandes could maybe be good in that system, but how demanding that system is on how well you have to be at retaining the ball and then playing really difficult balls,
with their center backs.
it's just not something they can do at this point. So
Yeah.
De Zerbi doesn't fit the personnel, but if they bring in the personnel, that would be a different story.
I think that's a long-term hire. But in summary, if United make, who knows, with the money they have, they could also make some big transfers, bring people in. You never know.
I think we could see Højlund having a great season next year. If
I
they
believe it. I
if
believe
they
in Højlund.
retool and provide a little bit more service to him, maybe I could see Marcus Rashford going somewhere else in the summer.
Mm-hmm. I mean, also
if he gets
too,
better service, then I think he could. I wouldn't be shocked to see him have 20 goals next season.
It's a hot take.
I don't think it's that hot.
Well, we'll see.
Yeah.
We'll see. But we also didn't mention Spurs that much in this whole podcast, and I think Spurs next year could, if they solidify certain spots and they don't have as bad of an injury run as this year, and if they get a good number 9 in, they could be very dangerous next year and have a lot of great FPL options.
Someone that I would love to see go to Spurs is Solanke.
That'd be
Solanke playing
fun.
up top. He is really nice interplay. I could see him fitting nicely with Madison and Son.
Press as well.
Kulusevski. I think Solanke would be great. And he offers a nice aerial presence that Richarlison kind of has, but he doesn't have quite the technical nature. He's not quite as polished as Solanke, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. Richarlison's just a chaos agent. There's no way around it.
Yeah, he is. So I mentioned this earlier on the pod. I think Crystal Palace are a team to watch going into the season, right? I think that their front three is incredible. And Glasner's been doing great things there too. So we'll keep an eye on that. The other team that I would be interesting to watch is Brighton. I'm not sure who they're going to bring in. There are rumors that they're trying to get Ipswich's manager, Kieran McKenna, I think is his last name. He plays a very attacking brand of football. It fits Brighton's identity because they do not want to sit back. It feels like they want to prioritize very progressive football. If they sign him, I think he'll fit the personnel really well for what they already have.
Yeah.
We'll keep an eye on that. But if he does go there, I think, and with the stipulation, it's not De Zerbi roulette like it was this season. It could be a very interesting team to watch and, target for our FPL teams next season.
Yeah, I think that's something that we'll kind of look back on and like look at this year and be like, kind of what if with De Zerbi and Brighton? Because if they weren't decimated by like literally like of almost all the teams in the Premier League, they may have had the worst injury luck. Because I mean, starting left wing, starting right wing, right back, left back, midfielders. I mean, they also sold a lot of people too, all that. So, but I mean, this team, if they would have been able to play their best personnel, would have been a problem for every Premier League matchup.
I completely agree with that. And I do want to push back on certain narratives that you say that, Brighton had a lot of injuries. Some people would come back and say, well, Chelsea had a lot of injuries. Well, Chelsea spent $1 billion on their squad. Mm-hmm. And you can see the difference there because Chelsea had really ultimately one really good signing, Cole Palmer, and he's the reason why they were competing for Europe this season.
Which is crazy if you think about where they were
from where they skyrocketed up the table near the end of the season. But with Brighton, their lack of squad depth became readily apparent. You have key injuries to Marsh, Matoma, João Pedro's injured for a while, Danny Welbeck, Ferguson's injured. You have Lewis Dunk out for a while, Webster, Veltman.
The list goes on. Estupiñán.
Yeah. There's so many, and Ciso, when Anate was injured at the end of the season. They had so many injuries
they were playing kids, like literally,
talented
like they were
players.
playing like 18-year-old kids that like are going to be really good one day, but at this point in time, it's just they just don't have the.
It kind of makes sense though. After the way this season went, I can see why Zerby and Brighton parted ways. I just wonder, like you said, what if? What if this season they would have been healthy?
Yeah, we'll never know, but it's a big question mark. I think Brighton fans will always kind of ask themselves that, you know.
Yeah, I think Brighton still have a very bright future though. I don't think this is the. I think they'll be in Europe sometime in the next, 2 to 3 seasons again. I would not be surprised by that.
So. Yeah. I'm also subtly hoping that De Zerbi goes to AC Milan because I would love to see Christian Pulisic cook under De Zerbi. That would be awesome.
It would be,
and to see Leao, like the system, like they need new center backs if they're going to do that. But
the place to see Leao would be left wing for Arsenal. That would be a great fit, in my opinion.
I'm not about it.
I think they could probably get someone else who presses better, but his talent on the left wing, opposite side to Saka, would be fun.
It like so with the ball at his feet, absolutely would be wonderful. But he does not meet Arteta's 3 non-negotiables.
That's true. He's got to have that for.
He just doesn't. Like I think he's an exceptional player, but after watching him at Milan, as much as I've watched this season, it just doesn't fit Arsenal. I mean, I think he would thrive at somewhere like United or like maybe possibly. I mean, I don't think Liverpool would be good, but I don't know, somewhere where he can just run the ball with his feet and not really worry about much other than that, you know?
Yeah, that's a good point. Well, Paul, I think that is going to bring us to the end of this podcast. Do you have any closing thoughts from the 2023-2024 FPL season?
Should I keep it under 30 minutes or?
Well, I think we're already over 30 minutes at this point.
No, I'm talking about my ending monologue.
Oh, I know. I'm just reminding you where we're currently at.
Yeah, no, I will say I really enjoyed this FPL season. I think there's a lot of takeaways kind of that we talked about on the pod, but at the end of the day, I think I always talk about this, and I think it's just me trying to remind myself and also Luke a little bit too that like this is a game. We play it because we enjoy it. And at the end of the season, when I was really frustrated with all this stuff, it's just a game, you know? And make good decisions, bad decisions, do your research, but play the game you want and don't get too wrapped up in it because at the end of the day, my rank's over 1 million. That doesn't impact my life. You know, at the end of the day, I'm not saying to decrease FPL, to not enjoy it. Like, I'm just saying it's a game, you know?
It is. And it's something that we care about, right? So you get into it, what you put out, right? And you put in what you get out or whatever. You know what I'm trying to say here.
God.
You
sound like our mom.
Really stumbled over that one.
This guy's a poet over here.
Apparently.
All right, let's hear your thoughts.
My final thought, though, is try to stay away from FPL as long as you can during the summer. I know a lot of people out there will be playing Euros, doing a fantasy game for that. And that's fun, right? But if you do that, don't invest too much time in it because FPL does take up a lot of time. It can be consuming, and a break is really nice. So try to make this summer a true break from everything fantasy related. And that way, if you're watching the Euros, you just get to enjoy the football for what it is, right? And that's one of the best things too, is just turning a match on and enjoying the beauty of the game that we absolutely love. At the end of the day, that's why we all started this. So maybe this summer you get back to those roots of just loving to watch football. And another angle to look at it is if you feel like you're lacking in some maybe match analysis or tactics, use this time to break down what teams are trying to do, how managers are changing what they're doing in games. Something like that is a great way for you to consume the sport of football. And then, inadvertently, you're still kind of working on your FPL game as well there, because if you can look at what a team's doing and trying to achieve, it fits you better in the long run for FPL, right? So my overarching thought here is just take a break from FPL, from anything fantasy related. Enjoy the summer, and we'll be putting out podcasts throughout the summer where we're talking about a little bit of Euros action. We'll be talking about a lot of Copa America, and our USMNT baby Eagles, how they're going to do over the summer.
Go baby Eagles.
We're very excited for that. So please stay tuned for that. That'll be coming pretty soon. But we're going to take a little break from the pod. So maybe expect to hear back from us in about 2 weeks or so, something like that.
I think the first U.S. friendly is like June 8th, maybe.
Yeah. So
maybe we'll
be
make
on
an
the
appearance
lookout.
before
Be on the
that.
lookout for that. But as always, if you ever want to get in touch with us, please reach out. Best way to do so is via Twitter. So, yeah.
Thanks, guys. Honestly, it's been a fun FPL season. I mean, like I said, like we started in the pod, 38 match weeks. That's crazy to think about where we were 38 match weeks ago.
Almost more than 9 months of our lives right there.
Yeah.
And here we are, end of the season.
Also, one more little thing. I also want to say it's really cool to see, like, when we went to FanFest this year, all these different things we've kind of done where we've met more people through, like, the podcast. Like, that makes all of this so worth it, just having those little conversations with people and, like, talking about our FPL teams or people discussing stuff with us on Twitter. Like, both of us love that shit. So, like Luke said, Twitter's the best place to reach out, but we're always down to have a conversation about just football in general or FPL, whatever it is.
Yep.
So
reach out anytime you will ever need anything. If it's FPL related, if it's outside of that, we're always here to listen as well. So please feel free to reach out. But everyone, please enjoy your summer, and thanks for sticking around with us to Game Week 38. It's been quite the crazy season.
Yeah, thanks for a great year, guys. We will talk to you soon, okay?
Bye, everyone.